Cuba, Venezuela, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Venezuela. What is that, Switzerland? Sweden? I don't know all the flags, but El Salvador, don't stop that applause. Mexico, USA. There we go. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Transmitting to Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, America. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Don't stop that applause, people, from Broadway Street. There we have all these countries represented. People joining us from all over the world. Don't stop that applause to receive the people that are watching us all over the planet. How great! How are you? Well, let me tell all the people that are just connecting that here, we spent the first hour singing, celebrating, worshiping, living an extraordinary atmosphere, and now we connect with the rest of the world, with all those marvelous people that watch us from different parts of the planet. Thank you for being there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, according to whatever time zone you're in. So it's a pleasure to be able to connect with you. And all of us that are here, we're happy. Still a little bit hot here in this region of California on the West Coast. But we know that we're going through the last 3 months of the year more blessed than ever. So it's a pleasure to all those that are on the other side. We want to welcome you. We have a full house today. And obviously we're very happy because I believe in just a moment I'm going to transmit what I believe God told me to tell you. Are we ready, people? Yes or no? And since the arena is ours, since this marvelous building, when we obtained it, we said we want to be a blessing to the city. So we proposed, I posted it online yesterday, we proposed that all the teachers from the county, the mayorship, when they have to have elections, or the yearly meetings of the public schools, they gather here and we don't charge them a single dollar, not a single penny. They don't have to rent the building, they don't have to pay the lighting. Our technicians, our engineers, our cameras, we provide everything willingly. And so it's not just lending the place, the venue. When the firefighters come here, when the police comes here, there's a cost that we absorb, and that's our personnel, our cameramen, our engineers, our sound engineers, audio engineers, light engineers. And we provide all this, and they cannot believe it, especially in this country. Because maybe in Latin America, there are things that still might be free. You can still steal some cable or some internet, but not here. Here it's extremely capitalistic. Here you sneeze and you get charged. So the police department can't believe it. And yesterday, the entire police department of Anaheim gathered here. The party started here at about 4 p.m. It ended at about 10:30 at night. So yesterday around that time, you could run red lights. The whole police department was here, everyone. All the police officers from Anaheim were here. They had their annual gathering. And they host a show, Anaheim Confidential, where they present a case, and then the crowd has to resolve a real case. Not yesterday, I'm sorry. I mean Friday. This was on Friday. It was marvelous because they are surprised. Of course, when they begin, they say we give thanks to River Arena because they've lent us these installations. But there are always people that say, I don't know if it's exactly like that. But the truth is, yes, we don't ask for anything in exchange. And I want to say this because this doesn't have to do with the generosity that comes from me. No, this building is ours, all of us. So every time we lend it, every time we let someone borrow it, I want to share it with you because I believe that this is a blessing to so many people that were here. And on top of it all, they say, I feel a spectacular atmosphere. It feels so nice to be in here because we bring all of our security, our volunteers. And so they feel that affection and they ask, when can I come back? So I don't doubt that there are police officers amongst us now so that you can behave, just in case. So to the whole department police department of the county, thank you for coming. And to you as well, thank you for letting them borrow our building to the police department. Very well. Are we ready? Say with me, I'm ready. Very well. Remember, unless someone is working for the Pentagon, all the rest, I ask of you, turn off your phones for just a little bit so that they don't ring. Because if they ring, then everybody gets distracted. Now, if Biden or Trump calls you, fine. But if not, then just make sure you try to keep it as quiet as possible so that no one is distracted. And if a child gets fussy, remember we have the family theater with a huge screen where you can go quickly. We'll give your child a few drugs, put him to sleep, and then you can come back into the service. No, just a joke, just a joke. Well, before I begin, and so that this title doesn't hurt anyone's susceptibility, you might be saying, oh, this is for someone else, not for me. No, it deserves that I give a pertinent clarification. During the year 1992, the Republican candidate, George Bush Sr., had a 90% popularity vote in polls. He had just come from a victory in the Cold War as well as the Gulf War, and so it made him an almost unbeatable opponent to a young and up-and-coming Bill Clinton. One of Clinton's advisors, James Carville, thought that what appeared to be Bush's strongest point, or his strength, could be a potential weakness. And he thought that while Bush was only focused on exterior politics and the global macroeconomy, he was forgetting about everyday problems that citizens live through. Day-to-day life, the economy in the United States, the trivial economy of going to the supermarket, paying for gas. And so then Carville hung up in Clinton's office a simple reminder with 3 basic points for his campaign. Number 1 was change versus more of the same. So the first point had to do with change, or just continuing to do the same if people voted for Bush. Second, don't forget the health system. That was very important in that moment for all Americans. And third, he wrote, it's the economy, stupid. Now, we'll never know if he called Clinton stupid or if it was just a self-reminder, but he wrote, it's the economy, stupid. And this last phrase, though it's shocking, though it sounds strong, it unofficially became one of the most successful slogans in all of history, on top of taking Clinton from being a senator in Arkansas straight to the White House. And the structure of this phrase, which sometimes changes a little bit, became viral around the world, even much before social media came about. And this slogan was studied by academics. It is mentioned in universities to highlight the aspects that are essential, things that should never be forgotten. So today's title isn't just about a banal license that comes from me, much less something hostile, but something very plausible, a phrase that has a meaning, and it's a self-reminder. In any case, I'm telling myself this so that nobody feels offended. If anyone says, oh, he called me stupid. No. I'm telling myself it's real life, stupid, because it's good to remind myself that that's what took Clinton to his presidency. With that being said, I'd like to transmit this message to you. And just as I announced it online, it's likely that you may not like it, but I'm sure that it will heal you profoundly in your soul. And it's directed to all those of us that feel that at one point or another, life took an unexpected turn and things didn't go the way we thought they would. There are occasions where you look at yourself in the mirror as an adult and you say, what I'm living, what I'm going through, it has nothing to do with what I dreamt of as a child. And let's agree that in the same way that the calendar has seasons, life also has seasons. Life has different times. It's not exactly like the calendar because the calendar is predictable and it follows a certain order. Tuesday comes after Monday, December comes after November, winter comes after fall, but in real life, things aren't like this. In real life, the seasons can change in just a minute, in just a moment. suddenly, maybe we were living in spring or summer, metaphorically speaking, and then we end up in a rough winter, cold, frigid. The seasons can change with a phone call or with a text message. And we may not be expecting a warning or a diagnosis. It's not like we hear, for now your marriage is great, but on Monday, it's screwed. Or you're going to go through a bankruptcy. What would we do to have a diagnosis beforehand like this, right? Or your child will go into rebellion in a little bit of time, so be careful. It would be marvelous to have these warnings, but the majority of times, no one can alert us that in a clear sky, rain will begin to fall, a storm, a heavy storm. Live long enough, and we'll have our own dose of storms. And all of us, in one moment or many moments of our lives, we experiment a devastating loss. A family member, a loved one, a friend dies suddenly. Our spouse has an adventure with someone else and we discover it. We find ourselves to be lonely after a painful divorce. Or they diagnose us with cancer or a tumor. Or our child is born with a serious disability. Or infertility, bankruptcy, broken friendships, memory loss, etc. Other losses seem to be more innocuous or insignificant, but they also hurt. They don't necessarily have to be so tragic. But repressed or denied, these small losses also crowd our souls like heavy stones that end up oppressing our heart. And our skin begins to wrinkle and grow old. We realize that today we're older than we were yesterday. In fact, let me just say this. You all look young. Younger than tomorrow, at least. Our children become less and less dependent on us, and that's why I insist. These aren't great losses, but man, do these things hurt as well. They grow up, and they need us less and less. Before, they could call us 8-10 times a day, and they might even bother us, but nowadays, they don't really call, or we're waiting for them to text us. Or we had to put our pet down. It seems like something trivial, but many times people say, that was the only faithful friend that I had in 13, 14, 15 years, and now I feel alone. I insist, these are more innocuous losses, but losses nonetheless. Other losses are more private and more difficult to classify. A baby that is a stillborn, an abortion, a failed pregnancy. Now the question is not calculating if the loss is gradual or sudden, if you go through it in private or in public. The point is that loss is the norm in life, not an exception. If you live, you lose things, not just your youth, not just your energy, your strength, loved ones, friends, relationships. And I know that our stories and our temperaments are different, and that each person is going to respond to these losses, to this pain, in distinct ways, because we're all wired differently. But what we cannot do under any point of view is ignore it. We cannot ignore the pain. We cannot say, no, it's not going to happen to me. No matter how victorious we feel. When we're children, one of the great gifts that God gave us is that our mind creates a certain defensive barrier to free us from that pain. It's a cerebral resource, a divine gift, that if someone experiments abuse in their childhood, sexual abuse or emotional abuse, the brain possesses a survival mechanism, which is denial. That's why some of us say, I remember all of my childhood. Most likely we remember a small portion of it. All the rest is lost in the abyss of the unconscious. But we remember how we were made to feel. In fact, our brain doesn't have enough gigabytes to be able to store all of our childhood. We remember parts of it. But the surprising thing is that there are adults that when they were children and they were abused, they may not remember that abuse. It's as if that part is being erased. Editing out the suffering in their mind allows the child to deal with these painful circumstances and survive emotionally. However, the transition to adulthood demands us to mature and that we go beyond that defense mechanism, because at one point or another, we'll have to face real life. We cannot live like children, denying everything that's negative. Jesus said in John 8:32, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." However, sometimes we get to adulthood, and many of these childish defense mechanisms are still there to protect us from pain. And when we take these things from our childhood to our adulthood, it's harmful. It contaminates us. It's toxic. Number one, sometimes we use anesthesia for the pain. I'm talking as an adult. We use whiskey, we use drugs, anything, an hour of pornography or casual sex. Number two, we deny it. We pretend that it didn't happen. We pretend that our pain isn't happening. Or we make up a plan so that no one notices that we're suffering. Number three, we minimize it. There are people that make things smaller. They say, no, it doesn't hurt. It's going to pass. There are others that suffer more than me. That's what our parents used to say. My dad used to say, no, there are people that are worse off. I would say, worse than dad? No way. But he would say, no, there's people that are going through it worse. I can't complain. Number four, we bury it. We hide the pain under a calendar or an agenda filled with activities, because the busier we are, the less time we have to think about all the things that agonize our hearts. Number five, we punish ourselves. We whip ourselves. We punish ourselves. We don't use actual whips, but we use rules or penances disguised as religion. That's why there are people that love to go to church often, not because they love God, but because that penance calms the suffering in their soul. Father, I've sinned. I almost hit my son. I almost hit my child. Okay, 3 Our Fathers or 70 Hail Marys. Whatever you can do to make it hurt less, right? Number 6, we avoid mentioning the pain. We never bring it out to light. There are people that keep a very superficial life, and they cross their fingers so that the monster of the lagoon of pain stays deep down beneath the waters. Show me someone that looks like they're always doing fine. I'll show you someone that's trying to mitigate that pain. I'm talking about even those that laugh at funerals. You ask them, how are you doing? And they say, good. If they sound like Joker, then they have a problem. They're just trying to mitigate that pain. Number 7, we try to deviate the pain. We attack our children with explosions of our character. We take it out on our spouses. We yell at our employees or other people. Number 8, we try to neutralize the pain. There are people that decide that they'll never be hurt again. We create a picture of a perfect family. We reinvent ourselves into an avatar of public consumption, and we live for social media. Whatever it is that we do to avoid it, the combo of real life comes accompanied with its dose of pain. That's why I started today by saying, you're not going to like it. Because it's like when a doctor gives us a certain diagnosis. If we're sick, we don't want to be told, oh, take some aspirin and that's it. No, we might not like this, but pain is a part of the combo of life. I once told you that a couple times during my time in elementary school, I had a classmate, a boy who had a degenerative disease. His name was Fernando Valente. The last time I told the story, I couldn't remember the name, but then somebody finally told me that his name was Fernando. I remembered his last name, but not his first name. This young boy's spine was twisted, bent, and each year his arms and legs bent more and more. He was the most noble and pure little boy that I ever met. And I felt identified with him because we were great friends. When we were together, it's as if we had many things in common, and nobody wanted to be with him because he was the crippled boy. I didn't have any degenerative diseases, thank God, but besides my spine, my spirit was bent. And in one way or another, I felt empathy with him, as if we were both crippled. He was crippled by his legs, but I was crippled in the soul. And Valente, if he's still alive, he should be my age. if he's still alive. I haven't seen him again, nor have I found him on social media. I haven't heard of him since we finished elementary school on that warm December in Argentina back in 1982. Yes, in Argentina, it's warm in December. I didn't make a mistake. I don't know what his life was like or what he's doing now, but I'd like to think that he has a pleasant memory of at least having a true friend during the 4th grade. I have that memory, and I think that as we grow and as we become adults, we try to minimize that empathy for other people's pain. In fact, our own threshold for pain gets very low. But often, God uses pain to help us grow. Pain makes us resilient. Pain makes us strong. In fact, pain is a great teacher, a great master. I always say, show me a survivor of cancer, show me a woman who survived breast cancer, and I'll show you a woman that doesn't create problems over stupid things. She never complains about crumbs or because the dog peed inside or because the mother-in-law's coming over. No, not even that. She doesn't create problems because she felt the deathly scent of her demise. She realized that her list of priorities changed. Now the good news is that heaven is a place free of pain, right? But on this side of the sun, pain is guaranteed. Between here and there, we will suffer. That's part of life. And you might ask, well, how does that encourage me? Well, before you all kill yourselves en masse, this is something that we have to remember, especially those of us that believe in God. Because if not, then I am just a scammer if I were telling you that. Oh, because you're a Christian, because you believe in God, you will not suffer. What's worse is that we may harm many people by perpetuating that lie. If you're going through a crisis, it's because surely you're lacking faith. Last week, I interviewed a beloved artist that said to me, I lack faith in life. Do you think that God doesn't love me? And I said, no, we all lack faith at one point or another. That's a distorted doctrine that doesn't work for anyone, no matter who says it. God isn't a rockola that when we put the right coin in, it'll give us the soundtrack to our lives. No, that's ridiculous empowerment. It works for those that pay fortunes to listen to Tony Robbins, Kala, or Daniel Habib, but it's not real life. Real life brings complications. So it's not just about repeating phrases, flying, roaring that you're going to do well. In fact, this might even work for multi-levels like Amway or Herbalife, but it doesn't work in real life. I don't have anything against Herbalife. Don't say, hey, what's going on? No, nothing against. Besides them producing diarrhea, but I don't have anything against them. Now, Herbalife will never sponsor us. Now, these doctrines have hurt thousands of people that have arrived at the same conclusion. The reason my child died, the reason my marriage failed, or the reason we lost our house is because I didn't have enough faith. No, this goes beyond simple cruelty. It's an insult to our intelligence. It's an insult to our common sense. Jesus never promised an easy path. He never said that there would be roses without thorns, years without winters, roads without obstacles, not in marriage, not when you have children. No, we're all going to go through difficult situations. In fact, Jesus said all the opposite. He said, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. This is a promise that that pastors don't want to make people repeat. Tell the person next to you, you will have problems, my friend. No, but God never promised an easy path. What Jesus promises, however, is that in the darkest nights, in the hardest moments, in the longest battles, we will have peace. We'll know that everything will be okay. We'll get out of it. But we will have problems, yes or no? Now, imagine in Lazarus' tomb, instead of Jesus crying, what if he said, hey, no one cry. Come on, everyone get up. Come on, Martha, Mary. Come on, boys, girls, they, them. Everyone empower yourselves. Imagine that. Or when Jesus was on the cross, instead of saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? What if he said, let me not complain so much. Come on, give a shout of joy. I'm going to rise. No. Pain is essential to be able to go through real life. That's why I always say that there's no worse catastrophe, people, than being submerged in a lack of reality in real life. That in our spiritual life, we lack a dose of reality. There's nothing worse than to be floating in a cloud of religious flatulence. See how fine I speak? And each day I know more and more people living there. In fact, real spirituality isn't just you fleeing from real life. No, it's absolute commitment to real life. It surprises me when someone watches our messages and then gets to know me personally and they say, "Hey, but you're a real guy. You speak like a normal person." No, but I'm referring to the fact that you look like, and yeah, of course, that should be reality. That people say, despite the fact that you have faith and believe in God, you're real. We go through the same problems. We share the same world. And so, like Solomon said, we have to break our lives into different seasons. Ecclesiastes says, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to dance, a time not to dance, a time of war, a time of peace. But on certain occasions, culture and society overwhelm us so that we believe that there are only times to be born, to laugh, of peace, to dance. But when the opposite happens, you feel like something's wrong. Not too long ago, a mother said to me, "I have 3 young children, and I feel like I'm trapped in my own home. I even have to go pee with the door open because the youngest can fall or something can happen to him. So she can't even have a moment of intimacy." And she says, "I'm losing my life." But in reality, what she feels is the pressure of believing that she's the only person living in that season. That she's the only woman that has to deal with little children. People show their success online, and they appear to be on the antipodes of real life. But what we show online is never real life. It's just the best parts of our story. We take a picture like this. Because if you take it from down here, your double chin will show. Am I right? Never take a picture from down below. Never, never, never. Not even if you're the Kardashians. You always have to take it from up above, like this. Now, if there are other things to cover, no, and then we put filters on top of it all. But that's not real life. The problem with social media and all those filters is that I know that this happens to many mothers. You see professional women that do everything stupendously. Mothers with physiques, mothers that can cook and make desserts perfectly, and when you make it, it's falling over. It looks like The Exorcist cooked it up. And they show you their impeccable homes, their homemade cakes, their themed parties, their ab workouts, strengthening their glutes like this. No, that's not real. Their 10 steps for a happy marriage. Their 3 blonde children that came out of a cereal commercial. Their crazy ideas of do-it-yourself for a fun family night. And you say, all I want is to get to the night so that I can crawl to my bed. What am I thinking about do-it-yourself? A fun Friday night with your family. Besides those perfect blondes, I have nothing against blondes, but that's just what came to mind. But they drink 5 liters of water a day. They say, drink a lot of water. No, they don't. They don't just go to the bathroom. They cause a flood. And you say, I have no time to drink water. And in your sad case, at the end of the day, after you see all that on social media and you look at yourself in the mirror with no makeup on, with your hair undone, you don't feel like showering. What for? You have throw up on your shirt. You ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? I must be lacking faith. And then you see her super organized. Besides having the calling to impact the world, she recommends to you how to exfoliate your skin with the embryo of a seal. So you can look like her. But no, that's the Instagram version. And sometimes these perfect Instagram models at either 6 a.m. or 9 p.m., she's not Kim Kardashian. She's a cloistered-in nun because she has to take her children to painting class, to Esperanto, to soccer lessons, to piano lessons, swimming lessons. She prepares her husband's favorite plate, but he doesn't look like your husband. This is a white man out of the Marvel movies. Your husband is like Hulk scratching his belly, right? But no, she has time to make TikToks, go to the gym. She posts things on TikTok like this. You wanted to do it once, and your children said, "No, Mom, please don't do that, or else I'll leave the house." And she posts biblical reflections. You know, there are people that have enough time at night to post Bible verses. Woman, empower yourself with God. Suppositions 3:7. The beautiful woman will inherit the kingdom of God. Inventioninians 2:5. Be a complete and healthy mother. Optimisms 5:5. Where are they getting this from? I am a victorious daughter-in-law. Letter to the drunks 2:13. I'm always splendid. Instagramintians 2:17. And these are the women that eat a whole cow and don't get fatter. They're devilishly thin. They don't sweat. They don't fade away. They don't have white hairs. They don't have a mustache. And you, little tenderness. You do 1,000,000 chores a day. You break up 40 fights. You discipline, you correct 30 times a day because your husband is not involved. He's always tired. You haven't heard his voice since the day he said "I do" on the altar. He's Bernardo, the mute that accompanies Diego de la Vega. He just walks around like this. As if that weren't enough, you have to be buying all the groceries, cleaning the house, making everyone's bed. You help with math homework, biology homework, physics homework. You make dinner. You put everyone to bed. You clean the bathrooms. You tuck everyone into bed. And then finally you have to clean up around the house. And when you finally exit the bathroom, meandering like a zombie, your husband, who doesn't speak, comes up to you with his elephant underwear, and he wants to get touchy. And you say, "Lord, either take him with you now or I'll send him to you." And when you're finally about to fall asleep, exhausted because you've done so much, you have to, do your deed. 2.5 minutes. I mean, from when you leave the bathroom to getting to your bed. With the last strength that you have, you go on Instagram and you see that squalid blonde with a perfect smile. She's tan, even in December. She posts on Instagram, "Hello, my queen. Have you discovered your mission in life today?" You want somebody to tell this blonde, "Hey, this isn't Instagram. This is real life. You beloved stupid woman. It's real life. My life isn't Instagram. I have a real life now." We all have a real life that is begging us to live it, for us to applaud it, really. That we go through it with stoicism, even though we have to go through rough seasons. Difficult seasons are not just about facing, in the worst cases, a certain illness, but it's all that. Raising your children, dealing with adolescence, and talking about hard seasons. When history is written, when our story is written, then we'll be a part of the Second World War in this generation, the catastrophe of COVID that almost no one speaks about. And I'll tell you why. In case you've forgotten what the pandemic was like, let me refresh your memory just a bit. That's why I said you won't like it. The fear of death struck the whole world. Everyone was living in a plague. In a matter of weeks, we found ourselves in quarantine. in confinement. The lights of stadiums turned off, concerts stopped, films stopped, churches closed, basilicas, mosques, synagogues. The world economy stumbled, and so that everything that made life normal and happy was taken from us. It was stopped for many, many months, and we were bombarded by negative news. We were kept in a state of uncertainty. We lost our human expression hiding behind a mask. One of the worst psychological scourges of the pandemic was not being able to see our faces for almost 2 years. This is not a joke. 2 years trying to smile with your eyes. I don't know if you're smiling, if you're dealing with your hemorrhoids, if you're an Asian. I had no idea. Speaking louder than we should have, not being able to breathe, pure air, and we forgot about everyday gestures. It was frightening to speak with a waiter, a bank teller, and you didn't know what their face was transmitting. More than 2,000 years ago, Arabs discovered that obligating people to cover their face and their nose, it broke their will and individuality, and they depersonalized them. So this made women submissive. That's why they imposed that all women were obligated to wearing a veil over their faces. That's why after the pandemic, we were left with a much sadder society, less trusting, less empathetic. And that's why there are so many that didn't want to come back to churches, because during the pandemic, people would take their temperature before they came in, and they would send them home if they were sneezing. A couple of boogers in the air taught us that the rules were equal for all. And what began back in 2020, or at the end of 2019, it was a traumatic experience shared globally, and the trauma always brings its receipt. And though that stayed behind, we cannot ignore the effects. In this moment, we're almost denying it. That's why no one speaks about the pandemic. There are no shows about the pandemic. There is no hour on how we lived during the pandemic. No, there is a global denial of the cost of those difficult months. We don't want to think that they even happened. That's what our grandparents did with the world wars. I had grandparents that survived the war, and I asked them, "Oh, how was it?" And they said, "No, don't ask about that. We don't talk about that." But then I found out that as they slept, they heard bombs falling near them. That it wasn't just an earthquake. No, they almost lost their lives. In the best cases, they almost did. But we still haven't paid the psychological bill of what we went through. We would never ask someone that went through abuse to just forget it, stop suffering, and just smile. Why? Because denial never heals anything, and everything that had a traumatic effect. We have to find the resilience in one way or another, with God's help, to be able to get through it, to deal with it. These days, we don't need ridiculous empowerment or positive messages that this is prophetic and let me tell you this nice story. No, we need a guide, a survival guide. And to be able to accomplish this, we have to do the same thing that James Carville did, Clinton's advisor. Stick on our wall. I don't know how many of you might do this, but you can put it on your fridge. Right. Never forget it. It's real life, stupid. But it's not that you're saying it to anyone. Don't say, "My love, it's real life, stupid." No, don't write it for your husband. No, but when you're overwhelmed by life, you have to know that this is real life. I don't know what you're facing in this very moment. Maybe all you can do right now is try to continue listening to what I'm saying through tears. Maybe you're going through a season in your life in which you feel like you're being ripped to shreds. Too many demands for your energy, for your strength. And just as you feel that you finally have a breath of fresh air, another punch below the belt that makes you lose your oxygen, and life isn't giving you a break. Or maybe you're dealing with a disaster. Everything that you could count on fell like a house of cards, and your life will never be the same. The death of a spouse, the death of a marriage, the death of a partner, the loss of a job. All these things can shake up our lives in a certain moment. But none of what happens to us surprises God. God will always be with us in all that we have to face, whether we believe it or not. That's why I always say when someone's in a crisis, stand on the rock. When your knees tremble, when the tears fall like rain, stand when everything is falling apart. And you might ask yourself, why me? I know it's real life, but mine is so real. Well, think about the example of an overprotective father, a father that never wants his daughter to feel any pain in life. So he doesn't allow her to walk alone because no, she might fall. And so he carries her anywhere she goes, even though she's 15. At a certain point, this spoiled little girl will become disabled, incapable of taking a step on her own without her father. And a father like this, no matter how loving he is, will end up failing in his most important task, which is to raise an independent person, raise an adult. And so it would be much better for that daughter that the father takes a step back and allows the daughter to fall on her face or stumble. And more often than not, we want to have a grandpa in heaven instead of a father. We throw a tantrum and say, God, why don't you bless me? And God says, that's not how real life works. I know sometimes life sucks and it's not fair, but God is capable of healing. But healing an illness implies hitting the pause button, escaping the imminent arrival of death. Nobody was healed forever. Even then, for every miracle that has happened, there are people crying in their beds because their spouse didn't survive, their child didn't survive, their friend didn't survive. Nobody survives these losses. We live in a world that gives us great losses, and that's a result of living in a fallen world. But God brings out the best of difficult moments. Romans says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. So you're saying everything will turn out well? Yeah, for those that love God, everything turns out fine. I spoke to you about my friend Valente, but there was another friend who wasn't crippled. His name was Matias D'Amico. Now that we're talking about my childhood, this is another story I like to remember. He wasn't the type of boy that I would have invited over to my house. He always came to school bored. Most of the time, he only spoke with monosyllables. His name was Matias D'Amico. He never dressed well. His clothes smelled terrible. He was always dirty. I met him in 5th grade. He came from another school where supposedly they had expelled him from. And every time that the teacher graded his exams, he felt a certain perverse pleasure in picking all the wrong answers. And on his grade report, he always got the worst grades. And so the teacher would write comments and say, 1st grade, Matias is a great kid, but he has a bad situation at home. 2nd grade, this is how his grade report was from the school that he came from. 2nd grade, Matias is quiet, timid. His mother was diagnosed with cancer in her uterus. 3rd grade, Matias is falling behind. His mother died this year, and his father doesn't come to the parent-teacher conferences. 4th grade, Matias has fallen far behind. He has no hope. He can't catch up anymore. His academic delay is maybe due to the fact that his father abandoned him and now he lives with his grandma. It seems in 5th grade, Christmas came around and all the students brought a gift for the teacher. And all these gifts were wrapped beautifully with bows and ribbons, except for Matias's, which was wrapped in newspaper. And it said, for Miss Lita, from Matias D'Amico. And the teacher was opening gift after gift. And once she got to Matias's, inside was a fake pearl necklace, which was missing most of the pearls. And those that still remained were old and yellow. And then he gave her an almost empty perfume bottle. And all the other students began to laugh because you're cruel at that age. And Miss Lita took the necklace and the perfume and said, "Oh, it smells so great." And she put on the necklace. It looked terrible, but she put it on. And at the end of the class, Matias went up to her timidly and said, "I'm glad that you liked my gifts because the whole day you've smelled like my mother. And her necklace looks good on you as well." And when he left, Miss Lita bowed her head, and we all saw that she began to sob. During the rest of the year, Miss Lita helped Matias more than anyone else. She would stay with him to explain what he didn't understand for hours. And after that, we didn't know about him for many years. Because when you go into 7th grade, we all went to different schools. After many years, a note arrived, because this was posted online after social media was invented. There was a note that said, "To Miss Lita, I'd like for you to be the first to know that I am graduating from high school, and I was second in my class. With love, Matias D'Amico." 4 years after that, another note arrives. "Miss Lita, university hasn't been easy, but I like it, and I wanted you to know that I am the first of my class." 4 years after that, "Miss Lita, if she was still alive, I wanted you to be the first person to know that from here on out, I am Dr. Matias D'Amico. I just graduated from medical school. And I would love for you to come and sit where my mother would have sat, because you are the closest thing to family that I've ever had." That is what suffering produces in certain people. That instead of them being destroyed, it makes them more resilient, it makes them stronger, it makes them more resistant. Jesus pronounced a parable in Matthew 7 that says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock." Once again, Jesus doesn't promise a beach without any winds, or a life without any storms, or a perpetual spring. He says, no, what changes is where you build on. But the diagnosis, the forecast is, whether you build on sand or on rock, the storms will come. Wherever you build, welcome to real life. And if the worst happens, what are we going to find at the bottom? Only people that have hit rock bottom have the right to inform us truthfully if they found God at the bottom or not. At the deepest part, for those that built correctly, they will find a faithful God. And the fact that we build our homes on a rock makes us immune to goodbye, to mother-in-laws. Now, it doesn't make our heart suffer-proof. Oh, I believe in God so I don't suffer. No, it doesn't mean that we won't feel the pain of shame, of rejection, of denial, of loss. I'm not capable of measuring the depths of the pain of parents who have lost their children and they sit here every Sunday. I don't understand it. I always say, when you lose a spouse, you become a widow. When you lose a parent, you're an orphan. If you lose a child, there is no name for that. There is no word in the dictionary for that. But I know that there are parents, mothers and fathers here, that have thrown dirt on the coffin of their children, or have kissed the cold forehead of their little ones. And some of them have told me, I've seen it. We have a mother here in the choir that says, if I didn't know God, then I would never have gotten out of bed after that. But deep down, at the very bottom, they found rock, and God gave them grace and value to get out ahead. So if you build upon Christ, we can hit rock bottom. And though we lose our breath, we can continue breathing. We can remain on our feet in the middle of the storm. After we hit rock bottom, we swim up to the surface after seeing God down there. And that's greater than any pain we've had to go through. Because at the bottom, God's faithfulness is always there. At the bottom, people, there is rock. Down there, everything is okay. At the bottom, you survive. Do we agree, yes or no? At the bottom, there is rock. And there are those that say, no, you don't suffer. No, at the bottom there is rock. There is solidity. So I want to finish today with another short story that I want to give to you, because I know that this is a message, like I said, you wouldn't like, because nobody likes to hear about suffering. But the idea is that you leave here encouraged, that you can say, I take new strength, I take new courage. And this is one of the stories that I cannot explain too much. So those that have ears, listen. You with me? They say that in the animal kingdom, there are two ways to defend from life, from the inside or from the outside. And the creatures that decide to be calm because their food reaches them, they form a shell. And when they have to move, their movement becomes a shameful ordeal, leaving the shell that defends them. This is the story of snails and other mollusks that don't have skeletons, but they've dedicated their entire capacity to elaborating a shell to defend themselves. But then animals that were seduced by movement, those that prefer to run, those that like to take risks in life without defenses, they've dedicated all their capacities to building a skeleton, something to give them the firmness from within that can allow them to expose their skin to friction, to weather, to pain. And the years go by, and we find ancient shells that we can date back millions of years, yet they're still intact. The snails, for example, that are on, or the shells that we find on the shores of beaches. We know that these are reminders that something once lived within them, but the shell remains perfectly intact. We cannot deny that the shell was able to resist through time all exterior attacks. The only thing that it couldn't defend was life itself. But then you have the sea oyster, that has another type of shell, but another quality. It's not a land snail. It's a sea oyster. And I once shared this story. The sea oyster in our story is Marina, an original name for a sea oyster. And God fixed his eyes on her and decided that she would be brave and valuable. She didn't ask for too much. She just wanted it to be happy, to not suffer. And one day, in the depths of the coral, God allowed that a little grain of sand enter Marina's shell. They said that it was during a sea storm, but not those that create waves on the surface, but those that move the floors of the oceans. And when that little grain of sand entered her existence, Marina closed herself violently. That's what she did whenever something came into her life, because that's their way of oysters feeding themselves. Anything that comes into their lives is trapped, disintegrated, and assimilated. If this isn't possible, then that strange object is expelled, but she wasn't able to do the same thing with this little grain of sand. That little grain of sand was very painful. It hurt her. It brought her pain from within. And far from disintegrating it, it was actually hurting her. And though she tried, she could not expel that object. And that's where Marina's dilemma began. What God had sent her, she wasn't able to integrate nor suppress, like the pain that comes suddenly, those text messages that make our lives shift 180, like those phone calls or that divorce paper, or finding out about the betrayal. That grain of sand is like these things, indigestible, but also inexpellable. And when she tried to forget it or ignore it or deny it, she also couldn't, because real life produces tears that cannot be ignored. And so while facing this situation, you might think that Marina had no other choice but to battle against that pain, surround it with the pus of her bitterness, generating a tumor that would end up intoxicating her life and all those that surrounded her. But in the sea oyster's life, not only her, but every sea oyster, they possess a marvelous quality. They can produce solid objects with their saliva. Usually sea oysters use this ability to build a hard shell on the outside and a tense body on the inside. But sea oysters use the saliva to build a pearl, and that's what Marina did. And so little by little, with the best of herself, she formed around that little grain of sand that pain that God had sent her, and around it, she began to create a beautiful pearl. I've been told that the majority of sea oysters don't have pearls. They're very rare. But these are produced only by those that decide to surround themselves with the best of themselves. The pain of a strange body that has hurt them. Many years after Marina's death, divers went to the ocean floor, and when they brought her up to the surface, they found in her that beautiful pearl that she created in her life. The pain of her real life, which was a grain of sand, ended up becoming a beautiful pearl. And as they saw it shine, nobody asked themselves if Marina was happy, if she had a life free of problems and anxiety. No, they simply concluded that she was very valuable, that she continued to be very valuable, because after all, people, we all hit rock bottom at one point or another. And that's because God wanted that value within us to shine, the value we've had from our childhood that our adulthood wanted us to forget. Of course, it's real life, but be calm, my loved one, because at the bottom there is always rock, and inside of us there's always something valuable. Always. Give a grand applause to this Lord of Lords. Let that applause be heard. Let's go. No. Once you're on your feet, give a grandiose applause to the Lord of Lords, because man, is it worth it to be alive. It's real life, but something good will come from it. Someone has to believe it. Yes or no? There's always something good. If I didn't have my spirit amputated as a young boy, as a child, then today I wouldn't be encouraging others to continue walking, to continue on. There's always something that marks us, that makes us strong, that makes us resilient. I always say that I must be the most resilient person I know, because I haven't known many more. But it's nice to say that I deal with things, I'm stoic, I smile when I don't feel like it, when I don't have strength, I get out of bed because you have to continue. And I celebrate the moms and dads that are present here, that have had to fight against life as immigrants, those that have said, I have no other choice. My dad was like that. I would say, Dad, you're sick, you're going to work. And he would say, well, who do you think is going to feed you? If I don't work, who's going to feed us? I've seen my dad work with the fever. He wasn't an academic. Academically, he was very limited, but he would say, I have no other choice. And I know that here you've had many parents, grandparents like this that have said, well, you just have to continue on. You just have to suck it up, put on your pants, and work. You have to do things the way you should. A man knows what he should do. A woman knows what she should do. And understand that life will have good seasons, bad seasons, but life will never look like Instagram. Instagram is a marvelous tool, especially for those of us that create content, for those of us that like to promote things, but it's never a good example for real life. It's like an edited version. It's like going to the theater and thinking that real life is like that romantic film. Life is full of thorns. Life is full of problems. Each day has enough of its own trouble, but blessed are those that have built upon the rock, those that are standing on Christ, God, and those that say, whatever happens, I know that I'll get up, and like a palm tree, even though I bend, I will rise again. Someone has to believe it. Yes or no, people? It's marvelous. And besides, people will say, there's something special in you. I don't know where you get the strength from, but there's something special. That's something that God gives us. The marvelous thing about being able to get back up, reinventing ourselves. And let me say this, don't become conceited. Don't let the Argentinian come out from within you. But I think us Hispanics have something that other ethnicities don't have. The capacity to continue on. The capacity to keep going, to reinvent ourselves. The capacity to have an internal re-engineering, to say, in the midst of a pandemic, when we would go give out food, there were people with their little carts selling tacos, burritos, arepas. And I would ask them, hey, aren't you scared of getting sick? And I remember some of their phrases saying, hey, my brother, where I come from, COVID is just a joke. What I've gone through, and I would ask, you're not scared? They would say, well, I have to work. I have to get out ahead. And they would go work. Nothing stopped them. Nothing slowed them down. And that has to do with resilience. And I celebrate the resilience you have. I celebrate those that survived the pandemic, those that survived divorces, separations, ruptures. Let's not even talk about losing children. Those that had to go through intensive care, those that sustained, those that had to go to eternity. If something brought you here today, it's that you built upon the rock. Will the winds come? Yes, I won't scam you. Will life get difficult? Yeah. Will things get better? Not always. Sometimes we'll have hard times, lots of winters, yes. Will the cold bring pain? Sometimes. Will marriage be easy? No. Will having children always be fun? No. There won't be DIY every Friday. No, you don't do it. You'll have nights of fevers. You'll have to rush to the hospital. Some misfortunes here or there. But the good thing is that when you get to the end of the race and you survive, you look in the rearview mirror of your life, and you'll know that nothing could stop you. That you built upon the rock, and you dealt with everything stoically. You stood up, you fought, you battled, and you'll say, life, I don't owe you anything. Life, we are in peace. God was faithful, and He remains faithful. How many of you believe it? Yes or no? Before we go, I would love for us here and at home to repeat this prayer together. And it doesn't have to do with the religion. It doesn't have to do with changing your beliefs, but with receiving Christ in your heart and saying, I want to stand upon the rock. I'd like to free myself, not of my pain, but of failing, of giving up, of letting my arms down because of the pain. So those that are here and at home, I would love for you to say with me, Lord Jesus, come into my heart, forgive my sins, and help me. Help me to go through life with all your soul. Help me to go through life, to go down the path that remains ahead of me. Give me strength to be able to stand upon the rock. Write my name in the book of life. And now I would love to pray for all of you. Father, thank you for all of your children here. I've transmitted what I believe you told me to tell them. I haven't added nor taken from what I consider you've placed in my heart. Thank you for them. I bless them, Lord. How the Lord loves you. How can He not love you, princess? How can He not love you, prince, if He's given His life for you? I bless those that are battling against life. That battle fist to fist. Those that wake up every morning, get on a freeway, drive down the road, wherever it is you go, to fight for a few dollars to maintain your family healthy with food. I pray for and bless all the parents, single parents that raise their children alone, those that have half custody, full custody, widows, those that are single, those that are separated, those that are going through cancer, metastasis, those that have been beaten down by life strongly, but you find strength, and today you say, I will resist. Even though winds come against me, even though tempests come against me, you will resist. Don't give in. The Lord tells me to tell you, don't give in, don't surrender, don't let your arms down. If you can, lift up your hands to heaven and say, Lord, I rise up victorious. I won't give in. Don't surrender. Don't let your arms down. Rocky, the bell hasn't sounded yet. Don't get out of the ring. One more round. Fight one more round. Fight for what you want. Fight for what you love. Continue fighting. Continue battling. The Lord will not leave you. Those that are going through a crisis, I know that the night is dark, but the darker the night is, the closer dawn is. So all those that are here today, I bless you. In the body and the soul, I bless your your income and your exit. When you wake up and when you go to bed, your fountain of work, your creativity. May the Lord bless your mind. May He give you much health. May the Lord bless your children. May He bless the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your hands. May the Lord bless you at the borders, when you come in and when you go out, in the city and in the fields. What you think, what you dream, what you envision. May the Lord give you not just a Sunday, but a blessed end of year. And may you resist. And may real life not beat you too much. May you defeat, because you're not alone. You and God are greater. I bless you in the body, in the soul, and in the spirit. May God bless you. May He keep you. Give an applause to the Lord of Lords. I'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye to everyone. Blessings.
Apareciste una noche de soledad, abandonado y perdido te reconocí. Tu voz diciéndome no temas, yo estoy aquí. El Padre me envió por ti y me curaste las heridas, me sanaste, mi Jesús. Todas mis cargas las dejaste allí en la cruz. Algo tan grande no lo puedo comprender. Oigo tu dulce voz diciéndome una y otra vez: oh, 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 eres bienvenido, eres amado. Una y otra vez: oh, 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 bienvenido a River, eres amado. Apareciste en una noche de soledad, abandonado y perdido te reconocí. Tu voz diciéndome no temas, yo estoy aquí. El Padre me envió por ti y me curaste las heridas, me sanaste, mi Jesús. Todas mis cargas las dejaste allí en la